If you've been told to just practice more and your voice still gives out on Sunday, I need you to hear this. More practice was never the fix. Here's what actually is, and I'm going to spend some real time on this because this belief has quietly wrecked more worship leaders than almost anything else that I've seen. Hey, I'm Sam, and I've been leading worship for over 30 years, and I've worked with countless worship leaders one-on-one who feel like their voice is the weak link in their calling. And not because they're not gifted, but because nobody ever showed them how to actually train it. I've sat across from worship leaders who were genuinely considering stepping down from their role because they didn't trust their own voice anymore. And almost every single one of them said some version of the same sentence to me before we started working together. And it's, maybe I just need to practice more. So today I want to take that sentence apart completely. And I want to do it slowly because if you actually understand why this is wrong, you'll never waste another season chasing the wrong fix. So here's the belief we're dismantling today, that an unreliable voice is a volume problem. That if you just put in more hours, more reps, more practice sessions, eventually it'll all click. Listen, it's not a volume problem. It's a structure problem. And I want to show you exactly why, starting with something that happened to me. I remember I was on tour with my dad, Dr. Ron Canoli, and he was notorious for having 2.5 to 3 hour long services. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a natural baritone. And at this time, I had no vocal stamina. I couldn't sing in a service for more than 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, really going in 15, 20 minutes tops. And this was a major problem because his tours would last months at a time. And if you couldn't hold your own, you would get sent home. And just in case you're thinking, Ron Canoli wouldn't send his own son home, he wouldn't fire him, then you don't know Dr. Ron Canoli, because he definitely would. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was disappoint my dad. So I had a major dilemma. And I don't know if you've ever been out on tour, but the days are long, the nights are short. From one city to the next, you don't get a whole lot of sleep and you're constantly moving. You're singing hard every single night. And on Doc's tours, that's what I call my dad, on his tours, everyone had multiple jobs. There was no divas allowed. That was a major rule. Everyone was setting up, everyone's tearing down. You're spending time with the congregation. You're taking photos, signing autographs, the whole works. You did everything. And then afterwards, we're on the bus, right? We're on the tour bus. We're eating late. We're staying up too late. We're having fun. We're watching movies. We're talking. We're just living the tour life. And that is a huge mistake because exhaustion was a major obstacle. And I've been on several tours with my dad where people got fired and sent home because they didn't have a strong work ethic, or they caused problems internally, or they lost their voices and they simply could not perform. Now, I thought the solution was to practice more and that I didn't practice enough. So I strained and I pushed myself practicing for hours only to have my voice feeling even more exhausted. And I remember a specific tour, his Welcome Home tour, where we had to sub out half of the team because they lost their voices, the vocal exhaustion. I barely made it through that tour, only by the grace of God, but I did realize that I needed help, and I needed help bad. And that day, everything changed when I actually sought out a vocal coach that gave me a couple of key techniques to incorporate in my practice time. And these weren't groundbreaking techniques. They're just some practical ones that I didn't even know to do, but I was committed and I followed his advice to the T. The change was transformational and my vocal endurance improved dramatically. I never had an issue on tour again, and I would tour with my dad off and on right up until his death. And when my brother and I decided to record our second album, the results were night and day. My vocal range had increased over 1.5 octaves and no more strain. Couple of tweaks, major transformation. And the moment is the whole reason I do this work now. That experience, because once I understood what was actually happening, everything changed. Not just for me, but for almost everyone I've ever worked with since. So let's get into the actual mechanism. Why does more practice without structure make things worse instead of better? Let me tell you why. Here's the truth that nobody will tell you. Practicing more without the right structure, it doesn't fix bad habits. In fact, it trains them in deeper. Think about it like this. If you're running with bad form and your stride is off, your posture is wrong, running more miles doesn't fix your form. It just makes the bad form more automatic, more wired into your body. It's harder to undo the longer you do it. Your voice works the same way. If you're singing through tension, shallow breath, a tight throat, pushing from the wrong place, and you just do that longer and more often, you're not building a stronger voice. You're building a faster, more efficient version of the exact problem that you're trying to escape. And this is why some of the most dedicated worship leaders I know, people who practice constantly, who clearly care, who are doing everything they know to do, also some of the most frustrated people that I talk to who are dealing with this kind of issue. They're doing the work. They're just doing the wrong work on repeat for months or for years. And here's the part that really matters. The human body doesn't know the difference between a good habit and a bad habit. It just automates whatever you repeat. Repetition isn't neutral. It's a multiplier. It multiplies whatever pattern is already there, good or bad. So when someone tells you to just practice more without ever addressing what you're actually doing in that practice, they're handing you a multiplier and pointing it at a problem. So if volume isn't the answer, then what is? This is where I want to introduce you to something that changes how you should think about every single practice session from here forward. Most worship leaders don't actually have an information problem. You've probably watched videos, you've read posts, maybe taken a class or worked through a course at some point. You are not short on information about singing. What you're short on is a clear, specific structure for applying the right information in the right order consistently, instead of absorbing more and more content and hoping something eventually sticks. Here's a simple way to think about it. 20 minutes with a clear structure will do more for your voice than 2 hours of unstructured singing. Not because 20 minutes is magical, but because every minute inside that structure is doing something specific, building breath support, releasing tension, training range, instead of just reinforcing whatever pattern you already have. That's not a talent gap. That's not a discipline gap. That's a structure gap. And it's the single most common thing I see when I start working with a new worship leader. Not a lack of effort, a lack of direction for that effort. This is also why burnout shows up so often in worship leaders who are trying their hardest. You can't out-effort a structure problem. You can only out-structure it. I want to give you one more example because I don't want this to sound like it was just true for me. I've worked with a worship leader who practiced religiously every single day and still feared that she would crack on the bridge of her songs. Every single time her moment came, she was afraid of this. Not because she wasn't trying, but because nobody had ever shown her what to actually focus on during her practice time. And once that changed, once the practice had a structure behind it, instead of just repetition, the cracking stopped. It stopped showing up within a few weeks, not because she suddenly tried harder, but because she finally practiced the right way. Same voice, right? Same dedication, completely different outcome. Because the actual problem finally got addressed instead of just pushing her to try harder. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking because I hear this in the comments a lot, especially with people that I work with. But doesn't practice still matter, right? Yes, practice does matter completely. I'm not telling you to practice less or that effort doesn't matter. I'm telling you that effort without structure has a ceiling. And most worship leaders hit that ceiling years before they actually realize what is capping them. And some of you might be thinking, I don't have time for some new elaborate system. I'm already barely fitting practice around everything else. And that's actually the best argument for structure, not against it. A focused 20 minutes fits into any busy week. An unfocused 2 hours, it doesn't. And it's the version most people are quietly trying to talk themselves into. So let's bring all this together. The belief was, I just need to practice more. The truth is, more practice without structure trains the same problem in deeper. And what actually moves you forward is a small amount of practice applied with the right structure consistently. That's the whole shift. Not more hours, but better direction for the hours you already have. Now, before you go, I want you to comment down below and tell me maybe how many hours a week that you're spending trying to get better and whether it's actually working or not. I read every single comment and I will respond to every single one personally. And listen, if you want the full breakdown of why this happens and exactly what a structured practice session actually looks like, I put together a free guide called Why Your Voice Fails on Sunday. And it's linked in the description below this video. Go grab it before you watch anything else from me. Remember, it's not necessarily about more hours. It's about better direction for the hours you already have.